constituents. Arizona Congressman Ron Barber was the district director for Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords when he was wounded in that shooting, and he joins me now. Congressman Barber, thanks for coming in this morning.
Good morning, Chuck.
Let's talk about what the president's doing today. What do you hope this process, it seems that one of the things that the White House is struggling with, how do you have this process that gets the gun rights community to stay a part of it? What do you want to hear from him this morning?
Well, I really believe that we can put together a broad coalition to deal with particularly the assault weapons and the heavy firepower that these large capacity magazines contain. Those of us who were shot and those who were killed on January 8th were shot by a young man who had a magazine that contained 30 bullets. He unloaded the bullets in less than 45 seconds, and 19 people went down. We, at the very least, have to get people on board about that, and I believe it's possible. Let me just give you an example. I was down in Wilcox last Friday. Wilcox is a rural area, a very strong NRA community, if you will. And as I was walking out, this 80-year-old farmer, third-generation farmer, said to me, "Ron, I've had a gun since I was a boy. I'm an NRA member for life. I hunt all the time. But you have to go back to Washington and do something about assault weapons." How
do you have the conversation with gun rights owners? I know maybe some will believe in this slippery slope argument that any legislation somehow will lead to more that more of their rights will be taken away. But how do you have this conversation? You probably believe a majority of your district would come down on the side of the NRA on most gun issues. Is that fair to say? I'm not sure about the majority of the whole district, but certainly a significant portion of the district, that being the rural area and the outside of... And you called yourself a supporter of the Second Amendment. You're very clear in your campaign website. Yeah. No, I do support it, and I believe that it's important that we protect the right to bear arms. But I think there are limits, and we already have laws that limit the kinds of weapons at the extreme end, you know, like grenade launchers and all of that you can't have. To not do something about the assault weapons, the high-capacity magazines, I think is irresponsible. After what happened last Friday, we have to do something. The citizens that I represent are saying, you've got to do something, and I'm prepared to do everything I can to make something happen. Something else that came out of the incident in Tucson, but also the incident in Virginia Tech, was mental health issues. And what's the line here between privacy and trying to figure out a way to keep guns out of the mentally ill? It might end up being a situation in Connecticut. We don't know. I don't have the full facts there. That's going to be another aspect of it. Well, I've been an advocate for mental health services all of my adult life. I worked for years before I joined Congresswoman Giffords as the state director and regional director for an agency that served people with mental illness. I know that treatment works. But I also know a lot of people just don't understand what they're seeing when they see mental illness. So I think we have to increase public awareness of the symptoms. I have a bill in play this session, and I'll reintroduce it next, which would establish training for what we call mental health first aid, people who can go in. Is this something like, if you see something, say something? Joe Lieberman uses similar. You know, if you feel like somebody's on the verge of having maybe in a bad place, right, say something. Treatment works. But we have to make people more aware of what they're really seeing. When I look at Lofter's parents, they saw a young man who was disturbed, but I don't think they knew exactly what to do about it. There are treatment methodologies and treatment processes. But the way the law is currently structured, you have to be committed. You have to be adjudicated, right. Adjudicated under dangers to self or others requirements, and it's very stringent, as it should be, to protect people from being basically incarcerated without process. But I think the only way, really, quite frankly, to deal with the issue of people who have mental illness undiagnosed or untreated from getting assault weapons is to remove access to assault weapons and large capacity magazines. Let's talk about, can you legislate culture? You know, the other aspect of this is the violence, culture of violence. You know, you've talked about Hollywood. You hear some people talking about video games. I'm uncomfortable with some of the violence in these video games. I think about my own. I don't want my son playing these games. Yeah. Well, I think it's a parental responsibility ultimately to guide our kids away from those kinds of games if we don't believe that they're appropriate. I'm really more focused on what's practical and pragmatic. And what's practical in my mind, I think now, is an assault weapon, removing access to... Go there first, and then everything else is a conversation. I think so. And then mental illness has to be treated. We cannot... I believe the two have to go on parallel tracks. And I know we're talking a lot about assault
That's fine. But if we don't also talk about mental illness and how we minimize it, prevent it, treat it, I think we're just not doing the whole job that we need to do.
All right, you've got some votes, you hope, that are coming up. We don't know if there are fiscal cliff votes coming up, but I assume at some point there's going to be legislation on the floor, possibly tomorrow. We have the different Plan Bs. Whereas, there was a time, there was some momentum for Democrats to support this $1 million threshold that Speaker Boehner is proposing. Would you support something like that if that were the only alternative?
I really have to see the legislation. We've heard about it. It's not been revealed to us yet. With a 72-hour rule, we probably won't see it until Friday. I imagine we'll be here if they release it on Friday through the weekend, possibly at least Saturday, to vote on something. I really have to take a hard look at it. I want a balanced approach, though, and I've said that throughout my campaign, both campaigns, all 4 campaigns, actually.
Yeah, you've been running a lot.
And, it has to make sure that we don't balance it on the backs of seniors.
Are you okay with the president's plan? Did he change this, or are you uncomfortable with it?
Well, I'm not too pleased with it, to be honest.
Would you support it?
Well, I don't know yet. I have to see the whole package. I think when you look at a balanced approach, negotiations are about giving things up on both sides. When we see the whole package, then I think we'll know. But if the package that we're going to see, or the bill we're going to see this week, is strictly about a tax increase on just one group, the $1 million earners and above, I don't think that's enough. I think we need more, and hopefully we will have more before we're done. I'm prepared to stay as long as it takes, even though I love to go home for my grandkids for Christmas.
A lot of us would like to go home. Anyway, Ron Barber, Congressman.